4 out of 5 children who walk into the family court system crawl out of it semi-orphaned. By semi-orphaned, that means that they just don't lose one parent. Today, when we talk about India as a society, we say it takes a village to raise a child.
It does.
It takes an entire family to raise a child. So the child has lost not just one parent, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, half his roots, while the other half is teaching them to lie and hate. What do you think is going to happen? In the words of one of the judges said, it is like asking a child to go through life with one arm, one leg, one eye. So what parental alienation does is it literally decreases the life expectancy of the child by 20 years. That is why I say it is literally murder by slow poisoning.
Now, Sunita, one of the things that as a therapist, you would see probably more often than someone like me does, is the effect of children on seeing her or his parents fighting, bickering and in conflict.
True. Children lose out a large chunk of their childhood memory. And I think it's a price that children pay which they truly don't deserve. So when you have a parent amputee, a parent amputee is someone who is extracted away from the equation of child raising. They do not have a role anymore in the upbringing of the child. So this entire process of parent amputation costs the child. It's devastating for the parent who's been amputated, but the biggest loser in this entire war is the child. And today, I think the entire focus of our podcast, our interaction is if we can bring people's focus on a more humanitarian way of approaching these crises.
That's right. In fact, We're doing this across a 2-part series.
True.
It will examine various dimensions, various perspectives, and people sharing their
absolutely
stories.
The need of the hour.
Yeah. Here is a person who went through something very similar, was estranged from her child, was separated from her only child, but managed to channel that mother's grief into something that that paved the path for so many other parents. We have with us, in fact, on the call, Gazal Raina. She is the founder of Milaap. It's a support group that is meant for parents who've been separated from their children. Gazal Raina, welcome onto the show.
Hi, Vasanti. Thank you so much for having me here.
Gazal, we also have with us my co-host, Professor Sunita Mani. And Sunita is a therapist by training. But first to ask you, Gazal, that Milaap at the moment, if you want to tell our listeners, what is it all about?
A big hello to Professor and thank you for having me here. Milaap is a social support group. I started this group about 4 years back. I started it because I realized that there was no space or no community for parents who go through something called as estrangement and find support on dealing with that phase of life.
So non-custodial parents, for the understanding of our listeners, are those who have not got the custody of their children following the divorce or separation. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Interestingly, in India, we don't hear much noise or talk about estrangement. I think it is catching up in the last few years. At the same time, the numbers are overwhelming. The numbers are heartbreaking. The stories are extremely sad when you hear how parents are not able to even have a phone call, a weekly phone call, which has been mandated by the courts for one of the parents followed through. So we don't have any organization who's probably declaring this, but we think this is a social pandemic.
Generally, most people, when they go through an emotional crisis or a trauma, the tendency is to cut off or shut down or move away from anything that reminds them of, the previous experience. And I just sit here and wonder, how is it that you dived right into the nucleus of your pain and then created something, where you resurrected yourself and gave a platform for people who are suffering silently?
When I initially went through the separation and the legal journey that was going on, I, of course, like a lot of people, experienced a complete rootlessness, in not just socially, emotionally, financially, as well as mentally. And I've said this a lot of times that what happened to me at one of those moments was like an aha moment. I was trying to, I was grappling to make sense of why this had happened to me, or what was life doing to me. I was dealing with the enormous grief and loss of my family. Despite the separation and the divorce going on, there is a lot of loss and grief that you feel at the years gone by. Absolutely. And right there at that moment, I almost had a voice asking me, please understand why this is happening to you. What is the purpose of your life? And at that moment, it was such a wake-up call for me to ask myself this question, to look beyond just my own pain and understand what someone else like me would be going through. It was, I would say, almost like I would not say an instant transmutation of the pain, but a transformation of thought. And I started to just randomly, what most of us do is Google and find out what really happens when someone goes through a divorce. And I could relate to the information given, and I could understand that this is a phase of life which is extremely traumatic. It's listed actually in the top 3 or 5 most traumatic experiences someone could go through. Right. And I realized the need for finding a safe place, so where you would not be judged, where you would not probably be traumatized further, you would not be criticized. And I found that a support group could do that.
Is there anything like called a healing? I mean, do parents reconcile, or is there a constant hope of the child or grown up adult coming back to them? And how does that play out? And how do they even get to know about the child's welfare if the child has blocked, intentionally or otherwise?
Is there hope in the life of people who are going through estrangement? Will the children ever come back? Oh yes, there are so many remarkable stories. But it is not so much as about the other parent or the other child, but I realize it's about the transformation within. So what Milaap does is, one, create a safe space for people who can come and share that this is what I'm going through. There are so many people who have said, Gazal, I've never ever told someone that my children don't speak to me. And I can tell you it is more difficult for men than it is for women because of the reasons that probably all of us know, the way we are wired. The reason why we bring a lot of experts here is that there has to be first, along the legal process that you are fighting or, trying to get access or, trying to find fairness, right. There is a lot of healing that is required, and that happens, one, through an internal journey. 2 is through the assistance of experts, whether it is meditation, whether it is counseling, whether it is any other healing modality that so many people across the country, Vasanti, are giving free of cost pro bono to Milaap. It's really remarkable. It is a process of also understanding the perspective. A lot of people who come to a group only see their pain. But I can tell you that a lot of us have sort of transformed to the other side, where we can see why our children must be doing this. That's, I think, the biggest shift I have felt in the last 6 to 7 years that I started working on estrangement, around which I started Milaap, is I started to see what is it that my child would be feeling towards me. And somehow that's where you become the parent, and then you grow through that process of estrangement.
What would your wish be? As in, what would really make things better in the existing system in India for the child? I mean, of course, the entire approach ought to be child-centric as one believes, but what is your wisdom on this?
Right. A lot of couples can tide over their differences if they go through good, well-structured couples counseling, and that should be made mandatory before anyone enters the court. It can be made, couples can be made to pay for it. If I have to say so, when they're ready to pay the legal system, they should be put through at least 3 to 6 months of counseling. They may not agree to stay with each other anymore, but at least they will not have so much of angst against each other, and that's the reason that they cannot co-parent.
Does the estranged parent have an additional responsibility of proving to be a good parent, Gazal?
Oh yes. There is always pressure from media, from society, from our family, our own personal values that on parenting. There is intrinsically a questioning of yourself that you start going through of the so many years, right from the time your children are born to the role that you have played. And this could happen both to children who are experiencing alienation as well, estrangement. Right. They begin to question the memories. They begin to question, did my parent or did my child ever love me? Now, the thing is that most of us don't even have access to children. So how do you prove yourself? Whom do you prove it to? So the war is actually within. And that could be a very dangerous place to have a war or a conflict with. So there is a lot of guilt. There is a lot of, I would say, sadness. There is a lot of grief. Grief, I would say, people don't process very well. They constantly process anger and they get stuck on it. So they blame. They always want to find the other parent to blame. Freeing yourself from that. I'm not saying that we did not cause the alienation. Yes, we could have had a role to play. Letting go of that guilt is very important. Understanding that you need to first heal within so that you could have a better relationship with your child in the coming future is very important. So it is a lot of work that we need to do. And while we constantly want to reach out to our children and tell them that there is a better work in progress parent that you can expect from me now. There is a lot of work that one needs to take up, and I would say spiritually maybe we have been put into this place so that we could evolve.
Gazal, hats off to you and the grit that you have shown to move beyond the personal pain and to actually make something, and clearly, bringing this on a larger public discourse would really, through this podcast, support that effort and initiative of yours for sure, Gazal. Thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Thank you, Gazal.
Thank you so much.
Your journey with us, and I must congratulate you because your efforts add up to making our world a little less lonely.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here and taking this message across to many, many more, not just non-custodial, custodial parents, but all the children listening into our children. Yeah. Because I don't think they hear the voice of their other parents. So if this show can do that, why not? Thank you so much.
One of the things that we need more conversations, more data on is about the impact of all this that we have spoken about on the children in very definite terms. Because if we are evaluating the health of the country, then the health of its future citizens.
Absolutely.
Sunita. So during the course of my read on this subject, I came across the Bamboo Foundation, which is doing work in that direction. In fact, they are very much into advocacy and looking at it as a child rights issue. So I'm happy that today we are having the founder of the Bamboo Foundation join us on this show, Dr. Rakesh Kapur. Besides being the founder of BambooTree Children's Foundation, he is a very, very vocal person in the space. The NGO here conducts research and advocacy on child rights and is currently focused on raising awareness on children of separated parents. Wow. Dr. Rakesh Kapur is a member of the Global Parental Alienation Study Group. It's called the PASG. It has published multiple articles and research papers. I have watched some of their videos online, and each one gives you a new insight, not just about India, but about what's happening globally. Mm-hmm. And this Bamboo Foundation has also conducted a pan-India survey on family courts in India, because that's a very integral piece. I mean, that is the place where the destiny of the child is decided in some ways, right, where the decision is taken of which parent is the larger chunk of the child's life going to be spent with. So they've done this pan-India survey. Dr. Kapur has also conducted several workshops for family court judges along with state judicial academies across the country. Great pleasure in inviting you, Dr. Kapur, onto this show. Welcome from both me and my co-host, Professor Sunita Mani.
Thank you so much. Hi, Vasanti. Pleasure to be on your show. And I am so delighted that you're taking up this amazing topic, which needs a lot more awareness.
I will, in fact, start with that, Dr. Kapur. Why do you think not enough has been said or done about this topic per se? Why do you get the feeling? I'm sure you have data that bears this out.
No, so let's start with, and like you mentioned in my introduction, that we did the survey all across India. Now, what is happening is that India is going through a huge social revolution where rapidly rising divorce rates are causing our children to be impacted significantly. This is something that has happened globally for many years, but in India, it has happened at such a fast pace over the last about 20 years that we've been completely woefully unprepared, whether it's the government, the judiciary specifically, and the schools, even the society at large just hasn't been able to appreciate it. Today, let's look at it simply. Our government still talks about that the divorce rates in India is about 2%, while they're actually close to about 16%. I mean, that's the kind of survey data that we've actually found. And if we look at urban metro cities, they're 30%, which means...
There's a serious underplaying of divorce figures. Is that to keep up the image of... culturally, it matters to have have a picture that not all is so sad when it comes to marriage as an institution.
1 out of 3 children today are going to schools impacted by this issue. Yet, the government, for whatever reasons, whether it's cultural, whether it's ignorance, whether it's just too many other issues I can't state, but they just have no clue. And, fortunately, 1984, way back in 1984, about 40 years almost back, India passed this amazing, very progressive legislation, the Family Courts Act.
Right.
At that time, we thought that our people were extremely well aware. But unfortunately, on the ground, the situation is terrible. It's extremely worrying. 4 out of 5 children who walk into the family court system crawl out of it semi-orphaned. By semi-orphaned, that means that they just don't lose one parent. Today, when we talk about India as a society, we say it takes a village to raise a child.
It does.
It takes an entire family to raise a child. So the child has lost not just one parent, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, half his roots. It's a terrible situation to be in. And that is exactly what's even come out even in our survey, which says even 9 out of 10, that is 89% of the lawyers and judges are saying that our family court system has failed our children miserably and is in need for drastic reforms.
When we speak of reforms, Dr. Kapur, before which the question is, you as an organization have even mapped the health impact, or you've brought in through your videos that one has watched about
Right.
the effect on both the child as well as a parent who has been alienated in this case. Just how
Right.
bad is it?
No, absolutely. It is, so before I even talk about, for your listeners, let me just put it, what is the end result of this parental alienation, right? What is for the child? Because child is the primary victim in this whole thing. The child loses half their family while the other half is teaching them to lie and hate. What do you think is going to happen? In the words of one of the judges said, it is like asking a child to go through life with one arm, one leg, one eye. It's hard, it's that bad. But coming back now to real data on this, Dr. Amy Baker and Dr. Mandy Matheson studied adults from US, Australia, Chile, Germany, Netherlands, Thailand, Belgium, England, everywhere across the world. And the data is shocking. You know what they did? They actually interviewed adults who were alienated as children. Multiple number of them all across these countries. 55% of them suffer from depression and anxiety disorders. 55% of them are abusing alcohol. 35% are abusing drugs. 40% of them have personality dysfunction or have been diagnosed with personality disorders. 35% have either already committed self-harm or they have severe suicidal tendencies. How I like to put it across is parental alienation is literally murder by slow poisoning. So the way we look at the practice of medicine today has changed with what we call as the ACEs, that is the adverse childhood experiences.
Right.
So what parental alienation does is it literally decreases the life expectancy of the child by 20 years. That is why I say it is literally murder by slow poisoning. And the child doesn't die just because of these heart attacks come at a much earlier age. Liver diseases, liver failures happen much earlier. Respiratory disorders, bone disorders, all of them are happening at 10 times the rate in children who have been alienated today and as adults. So, we're
Dr.
talking
Kapur,
about...
You did mention the survey in these countries. So does it mean that these are countries or this is the impact where legal systems and good case studies of co-parenting is not in place? Because what is the solution therefore? If parents have to split, if two adults cannot get together, they have to separate and part. What is a good way therefore?
Absolutely. So this data is obviously about alienated children because these people struggle with the same issue of the social revolution earlier, at least about 4 to 5 decades before us, and this is what they found. So what is the solution? 60 studies on 2.5 lakh children all across the world, 36 different countries have clearly stated, you want to remove all the ill effects of divorce or parental separation, practice shared parenting. Shared parenting by definition means 35% of the child's time should be with either parent, right?
Right.
Come what may. And the funny part is a lot of people say, oh, but what if there is conflict between parents? Then what do you do? Even in that case, shared parenting. Because as one of the researchers put it very beautifully, loss of a parent is the cut. You want a Band-Aid, the only way you can do that is by bringing the parent back into the child's life. That is the only healing factor that can heal the child. In case there is huge difference in parenting styles, even then, shared parenting. Difference in income levels, difference in any kind of, the two households may be different.
Right.
Shared parenting produces the most optimal results. The debate on this is long over now.
How do we make sure that there is law at one place, but actual, in the home situation for the child to not come into any harm, or parents to not say these vicious or toxic things, right? So this basically means that the parents have to be made aware of co-parenting, regardless of what the legal process is.
Absolutely. So, various countries have followed some various ways to do this. So, the most extreme examples are countries like Brazil, Mexico, and Romania, who've made it parental alienation into a criminal offense. So, by law, right? So, but the way to actually, I believe, is to start off with is that the moment any two parents walk into the family courts, the first thing that they must be done is a workshop must be conducted for them, a mandatory 1 to 2 days of workshop where they must be told in detail about the impact of this on the child. The worldwide experience is that almost about 30% of the parents, when given this kind of information, naturally desist. 70% don't. The second major thing that needs to be done, and I'm sure as a psychotherapist, Professor Sunita ma'am would definitely vouch, we find that almost about 50 to 60% of these parents are suffering from personality disorders. Typically either the borderline personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder. Therefore, like UK has set up a body called known as CASCAS, CAFCASS.
I see.
That's an acronym, where they have put in child psychologists and psychologists to evaluate the parent and also do counseling for these parents. Therefore, a court-attached body must be put in. The third thing is, I think, a huge mindset change needs to come in the society, which is to say, we must identify parental alienation as child abuse. And the moment it is identified as child abuse, as it is done in countries all over, including by United Nations, by WHO, by American Psychological Association, everybody recognizes it as child abuse. Therefore, the first absolutely mandatory thing that we need to do is protect the child. Therefore, whatever it takes, whether it's psychological evaluation, shift of custody, training on counseling of parents, and lastly, I look at it this way. So, American Psychological Association did a study where they found emotional abuse leads to outcomes worse than even sexual abuse of children. Right. Therefore, the only question I would like to leave your listeners with is, if we find one parent is taking good care of education, clothes, and food for the child, but is sexually abusing the child, what action do you think should be taken? I love this statement, and I would like to really put it across to what Mr. Nelson Mandela once said. There is no greater revelation of the soul of a society than the way it treats its children.
Yeah.
Therefore, if we do not first take care and protect our children, we do not have the right to call ourselves even a civilized society.
Indeed. Very often in the public imagination, the media, we feel, or people feel, that the judges are not, or the lawyers are not sensitive enough to children, this position of a parent in a divorce and separation situation. So, is that what you found? And what's been your experience in the workshops? What are people from that judicial system telling you?
So, we're obviously getting mixed this thing, but by and large, there are two things. Number one, there is very poor education and awareness and training even of the judges. It's like literally, I can't blame the judges as individuals, because when they come into the system, they come in with their own biases in life, right? And they cannot be removed unless training and education is done, which is at a very, very poor level. Second is, I believe that the judicial system needs a support structure, a support structure of psychologists or counselors, support structure of investigators to be able to find the truth, because the judges are actually probing in the dark. So, unfortunately, because of these two reasons, we see what is happening in Indian family courts as what I call as parentectomy. It's a medical term wherein what we do is we deliberately, surgically remove one parent from a child's life. That is what, just the way we have an appendix. When we remove an appendix, it's called as appendicectomy, right? Because it's a toxic. So we remove a parent, and that is what they've ended up doing. Lastly, because, I would really like your listeners to ever walk into a child's family court complex and just see inside the visitation complex of a 300 square feet room, 20 children along with their parents, grandparents are all crying. Somebody is shouting, police is there, and they expect a parent-child bonding to happen in a complex like this. So therefore, the infrastructure is lacking. The support system is completely lacking. The training is completely lacking. Unless these three things are taken care of, I really don't think I can blame the judges, but I must blame the judicial system right? Finally, just try and imagine, Vasanti, as you might have a daughter, try and think about it, daughter or a son. Imagine that your daughter or a son is being called to be interviewed in the same complex where criminals are all around you. It's not as if the family courts are separate from, the civil and the, right?
Yeah.
They are coming in and a stranger takes them inside a room and asks them questions. And that stranger is maybe a judge, but he's asking him questions like, Beta, who do you want to live with, your mother or your father? What kind of a question is this? And I see 7 out of 10 judges asking that kind of a question. That's like asking a child saying, do you want your right arm or your left arm? I'm going to remove one arm from you. How is that even something that we accept as humans?
By drawing this word picture for us, our listeners, Dr. Rakesh Kapur, you've kind of given an idea of something which we don't imagine. I mean, even enough when, let's say, we get to know that a friend has divorced or separated from her or his partner, and then the child is going to then, go with one of them. This is not the image that first comes to mind. Thank you for bringing in the larger context. And globally, of course, it's such an important issue, but would like to thank you once again for being on the show.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you
Kapur.
so much, Ms. Vasanti, and thank you so much, Professor Sunita. I am really indebted to all of you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Naturally, a child is loyal to its parents, So when you have a child who rejects one of the parent and chooses to live life with the other person, there are basically 3 ways that a child does it. So the first case scenario is where if the child is subjected to narcissistic parental alienation. If you are someone who is subjected to, narcissistic parental alienation syndrome, what happens is the person would put the child through silent treatment, not speaking well, showing a kind of dislike for having gone, making the child question, did I just betray someone who is, putting a roof over my head and providing, did I make this person feel bad by going? So every act, and there's a lot of confusion over there, there's a lot of brain fog over there, but you agreed, you sent me. So should I, was it my responsibility to say no? Right? Or they might
go there and yet probably stay distant or express my dislike.
Yes. And especially when they come back and share an instant, we were playing and then mom just pushed me and I was about to fall, and then, thank goodness nothing happened. And this person would give an exaggerated response. Oh, you fell? She pushed you? And the child would be like, no, we were just playing. I just can't believe that someone can just push a child, and the child is confused. Oh, is this the way I must be perceiving this whole thing?
Right.
So you put on a front like Mother Teresa part 34 in front of your child and confuse the child. So manipulate a sense of cohesion in the child itself. So in this kind of scenario, then the child rejects the parent because it doesn't want to, it believes that, by doing so, I'm keeping the peace for the other parent, right? And just detest anything to do with the other person, so that I know that this is what you are expecting of me and you're providing for me, so I'll do this for you. The second could be that, if the child has attachment trauma, that is, the period from 0 to 5, if the parent has not spent considerable amount of time due to ill health or because of work, then, when there is a custody battle, there could be clearly a sense where the child, without remorse, could reject the other parent. And that is why the primary years of a child's life, having both the parents at least until the age of 8, seems crucial, because after that the child has a stronger sense of self and personal beliefs and ideologies, generally building into, its developmental ages that's going to follow later on. And the third case scenario is where you have a child who is suffering from personality disorder. Okay. Now, this is where, you have a deeply biological propensity to ingrain something on one of the parents. If they have some kind of a mental illness, then it can show up in a child during its adolescence period. And in that case scenario, a child can reject a parent without remorse.
And this has got nothing to do with let's say, the parents warring or fighting or in a divorce or separation scenario.
So it's a matter of time, no, Vasanti? How long can you brainwash a person? After a certain period of time, the child, when it goes well into adulthood, can get a sense of reality. Right. And it's also an opportunity for the child to not look at the parents from the parental pedestal. Here you would have a child who's able to look at the parents as, another human life who have brought me into this wonderful world. I'm grateful to them, but that is about it. Right. There is no romanticizing, or idol worshipping the parents, like, okay, they've given me my life. And, so these are the children, who are well-developed adult, who can look at another human being and take them for their flaws and also the humanness.
Yeah. While we say that, we also have examples of successful co-parenting even before it became a fad. I mean, we have a celebrity case
Amazing,
like Gazal Sahab, and
Rakesh
and Bosky has actually spoken about in interviews where, and I quoted this in my article as well, Sunita, about how she really felt like it was from one room into another. She didn't
I
feel
smiled
like
when I read it. That's how it should be. And it's beautiful. Co-parenting, if we can achieve that, I think it's going to be phenomenal, because you get the best of both worlds. And this is something that I want to, I want this message to reach out to all those parents who have parted ways, and, a single person is raising the child up. Give scope for the child to ask every question possible under the sun. And it's not going to be easy, because one, it's very shocking when you hear your offspring come and, throw an arrow of question which you never expected to come from your child. You hate Dada, but how is it you love me? And as adults, as people who want to be a role model for our next generation, I think we need to be well prepared to answer questions like this. If you can give an answer to the child, then it will expand the way the child perceives this world. So give scope for your child to ask questions. Don't marinate in the in the emotional upheaval that I have done so much for my child, and my child comes around and says that, what is the point of celebrating my birthday when you can't give me a gift like my other parent gives me? These kind of things. Let every question exhaust in the child's mind, and you will be surprised to meet the adult on the other side of this reality. It's literally, asatoma sadgamaya. It's really a journey from darkness to light.
So there are multiple scenarios. There are so many possibilities of parenting, and I think we've discussed some of those. In part 2 of this episode of Children Caught in Parental Wars, tune in to listen to the voices of parents. An estranged father who shares with us that he's seen as a troublemaker by some parts of the society, and also of a mother who consciously decided to give custody of her only child to the child's father.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Emotional First Aid Show. If you like what you heard, do subscribe and write in with your comments and suggestions. Thanks again for watching.